So there's a hidden cost that is destroying your margins on Amazon. And it's one that most sellers honestly aren't truly paying attention to. Therefore, as Amazon sellers, we need to truly deeply understand the drivers that are eroding our margins and what's actually happening in our Amazon business. But most don't know what this hidden cost is and really what to do about it. In this video, we're going to get into what that hidden cost is, how to identify it in your Amazon brand, and what you can do about it. Let's go. What is up, guys? Welcome to Heist, the YouTube channel dedicated to literally my experience selling on Amazon and all the nooks and crannies and good things and bad things that I've discovered along the way. And if you've been selling the last year or so, you've probably seen a lot of changes, particularly around your costs and how much margin and ultimate cash is flowing in and out of your business. Now, there's a whole host of things that are going on that I've talked about on this channel, and you're probably already focusing on things like pay-per-click costs, manufacturing costs, shipping logistics. But there's a devious little cost item that I think most people overlook. And as I've really started to turn over every rock I could to improve the margins of my various Amazon brands, I focused on this one metric. I really started to look at this one metric, and that is your return rate. Now, I'm going to get into how to find it, what to do about all those things, but just to illuminate, let's start by looking at your return on investment. Now, this can be done holistically across your entire business, but most folks, if you really want to kind of identify where the bleeders are going to be looking at each individual product. Now, I realize ROI calculations may be nothing new if you've been selling on Amazon for a while, but typically what most people are going to do is fairly basic, and this is where some of those hidden costs come to bite you. So a lot of folks are going to look at obviously their factory costs, right? So what are you paying the actual factory for your goods? What does it cost to actually ship, pay tariffs, and land it into the US or land it into an Amazon warehouse? Then you take out the Amazon fees, right? So some of that could be their fees to actually pick, pack, and ship your product, which is going to be based on the size of your product. And then you're going to deduct an Amazon FBA referral fee, which for most categories is going to be 15%. After those costs, the majority of your costs are going to be in the pay-per-click front, so paying to actually get folks to convert. That's deducted. And then you've got an ROI. So this is an example proportionally. This is very generic. This is actually taken from one of my Amazon brands, but it could be really across the board depending on the category you're in. But most folks are going to see around that 28 to 30% range for their actual factory landed COGS. FBA fees, again, very dependent on size, are going to run around 19%. That referral fee, again, for the majority of categories is 15%. And then in modern Amazon, you're looking at about 15% tacos, or the total amount on ads that you need to spend for your product. So when it's all said and done, not factoring in some of your software costs and other things to run the business at the product level, that's going to put you in the low 20% range for most brands. So looking at an example of a $50 product, you deduct all those out on a proportional basis, and most folks would be left with around $11.50 or an 82% ROI. Awesome. That's enough to make money. That's enough to cash flow. That's enough to buy new products. Let's go on and figure out launch strategies, etc. But there's one that's missing that I think people think is incremental and small and they don't need to worry about it, but it's actually much larger than you think it is. So what about returns? Again, I think a lot of people just assume it's a rounding error, somewhere like 2 to 3%. Yeah, maybe I throw it in my calculation, maybe I don't, but it's not really a consequential cost like pay-per-click and obviously the cost of your product and Amazon fees. But it might just be that hidden little devil that is scraping away not only your net margins, but the ultimate ROI or cash turn in your business. And it gets even worse, right? Not only do you have the percentage of the return rate, but depending on the reason that the customer returned, you may be actually paying to ship it back. You may be paying to dispose of it. And a little hidden fee that most folks don't know about, which came into effect in June, is actually if your return rate is above average for your category. So here's the standard return rates. The threshold that you need to stay at or below across categories. I realize it's a bit of an eye chart, but you can see that across different categories. And then this is the new fee. So let's say that the return rate threshold is 5% for your particular category. And let's say that your actual return rate is 8%. Those 3% of products that are above the threshold, based on this fee chart, you're actually going to get charged a fee for every single product that comes in above that threshold. So where do you find that information? Again, I don't even know most sellers look at this in detail. So this is the link that we're going to go to here. But basically, once you go to that link, you're going to get to the FBA return section. And it's going to give a generic overall view of your entire business. So for this particular brand, the average return rate is 7.15%. It's in categories where the return rates are a little bit higher. That's over the last 12 months. And then you can actually look at specific units here. So on the left, you're going to see various products, what category they're in, what the actual return rate is, how many return units there are. And this may be illuminating, right? So some of them, if I'm assuming like 3 to 5% or whatever the normal is, I might be okay. But you can see some here that are 12%, some that are 7%, some that are a little over 5%. So going back to that ROI calculation, if I haven't included it at all, this is a massive bite into margins. Or maybe if I've included just a 2 to 3%, 3 to 5%, some kind of generic range, it may not be the return rate for your actual product category that you're selling, and it drastically changes what margins look like. And then you can see here on this top example, we've got in July for this product, the return rate was 4.93% and the threshold was 8.7. So about half or so of what the actual return rate is for the category. I'm not going to have additional fees there. But look at this sneaky other one here at the bottom. July, the return rate for this product was 6.1% and the return threshold was 5.5%. So for everything above that 5.5% return threshold rate, this product's going to get fees for every product that's returned over that. So you can see as an example here, that product saw a $75 fee in June, July saw $21, and then August saw $18. So the big so what here is you need to understand what your actual return rates are at the product level. You need to know if it's higher or lower than the threshold, and you need to factor those eroding costs into your ROI calculation to see really, is this product bringing in as much as I think it is. It's also really important, I think, to look at a 12-month view because return rates are going to be very cyclical based on your sales rate. So say as an example, you sell a crap ton in November, December, which a lot of sellers do. Your return rate is going to be artificially low because the units going out the door versus the ones that are returned from the previous month may proportionally seem quite low. But guess what? When January comes around and sales come back to normal levels, you're going to have return rates from that spike period in November and December, so it may be very high. So you need to look at this seasonally, but you should really be looking at that long-term 12-month view. So the so what here? Your return rate is likely not 2 to 3%. And if you're over the threshold, you not only lose those return costs, but you also incur fees if it's over that threshold. So let's go back to that example of a $50 product, again, using those same proportions where we didn't really factor in return rates. When you actually do factor in return rates, we're looking at a margin down to $10 or a 71% ROI, not 82%. Some products this may matter not at all. Some products this may be the difference between actually keeping the product or actually killing it. Now, another thing to keep in mind here is a lot of sellers don't really know what the return customer experience is for people that buy your product. So I actually went through an example of some of the products I bought on Amazon. You can see here are 3. And then if I go and I click on choosing to return an item, it lets me select the product from that particular order. And you can see all of the reasons here. People just think it's like, yeah, I just returned either I didn't like it or it didn't work. But there's a lot of reasons, and most of the reasons that customers are going to select are going to be punitive and cost the seller money. So if they bought it by mistake, they just didn't really want it, whatever the case is, the customer is actually going to pay that fee to return it to Amazon. However, if it's an inaccurate product description, if the product's defective, if the customer buying it points to you, the seller, as the reason for the return on the product, and Amazon approves it, you're on the line to pay to return that product back to Amazon. Now, another little gem that you may not know about is Amazon actually offers a troubleshooting section as a part of the return process. So in this example here, you can see if I select troubleshoot on my own, and then I go forward, this particular seller actually has some setup troubleshooting stuff that can get in front of and help the customer in reducing the return rate. But what are some other things you can do? So really you need to truly and honestly look at the feedback that comes in. In that return section, you can actually see the voice of the customer, what the return reasons are, whether it's defective or the actual things that customers have put in as notes as to why they're returning the product. A lot of the time, it's not your fault and those notes may be useless, but there are hidden gems in there that can help to identify issues that customers are having with your product, defects, quality, things that you can take back to the factory to improve on future orders. The second thing is to add better descriptions. I think oftentimes that we've got to just sell all the good things about our product in our listings, but there are quirks with products. Sometimes there's things you need to do for installation. Sometimes there's things that customers need to know before they buy to ensure it's a fit for their needs. Be honest in your descriptions. If you're not, you're just going to get customers returning product. You're going to have to pay for it. It messes up your supply chain. It messes up your margins. Sell customers why they should buy your product, but don't be afraid to also disqualify customers and get those that shouldn't be buying your product out of the funnel using a proper description. You saw that troubleshooting guide too. You should absolutely, especially if you've got a technical product that requires some hands-on information when customers first receive it, add that to the troubleshooting guide. As customers go through the return process, if you've got those notes there, it may actually enlighten customers on how to actually make it work for them, such that they don't need to return the product. The final piece here is packaging inserts. So there's some things that you can do if you include an insert that direct customers before they return the product to seek you for help. Honestly, we use this a lot to just straight up refund customers if they've got an issue so that they don't actually send the product back. Again, when they send the product back, you lose the product costs oftentimes, especially if it's not sellable. You may be paying shipping fees. You may be paying fees for Amazon to destroy it. So an easy path here may be giving customers a frictionless way to address their issues directly with you instead of returning it to Amazon. And then you can either address the issue or just straight up say, hey, we'll just give you a refund or we'll ship you a new one. Now, another thing here, especially if you sell internationally and don't really have a footprint of processing returns at your own warehouse in, say, the United States, is to go to this link here via this QR code and opt out of returns processing. So once you go to that link, this is the setup that you're going to see. The default settings is that Amazon's going to review every single return that comes in. They're going to figure out which one's new, which one's defective, recirculate them back into inventory, and then you'll be charged a disposal fee for the ones that you don't want. You may just want to say straight up, if somebody returns it, I don't want it going back in circulation. I don't want more issues. I don't want more costs. I don't want more negative reviews, more defect rate, more high return percentages by just opting out. So regardless of the strategy that you want to use, I think it's really important to understand that return rates matter. They're not this inconsequential incremental cost that you don't need to worry about. You should absolutely be calculating it into your ROI. You should be looking at real return rates over a 12-month period and see how that changes seasonally. You absolutely need to know what your actual return rate is per product and whether you're over that threshold. And you should be thoughtful with how you create your listings, how you refine your products, how you listen to customer feedback, the inserts you include, the troubleshooting tips you have, and your return operations to smooth out this process. If you haven't been paying attention to return rates, I hope this video is valuable. I'm in the fight with you, kind of trying to scrap and turn over every rock to improve the margins of our business. It's not a nice to have anymore. This is the stuff that you need to do to really be pro at selling on Amazon. Till next time, guys, cheers.